Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I'm excited to hear this conversation. There's been some really amazing things going on down in the Asheville area. We're going to be hearing from Shelby Treichler with the Asheville Tool Library, and also Dan Hettinger with Western North Carolina Repair Cafe. I'm going to let you two take it away.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Cami. That was beautiful. Really appreciate that. I hope that this isn't too much of an abrupt shift from that beautiful introduction, but I have a lot of slides and um, would like to move through this pretty quickly. Yeah, Shelby, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name's Shelby, she, her. I am a volunteer with the Western North Carolina Repair Cafe and also with the Asheville School Library. Um, and we're just going to do a little introduction of ourselves, and then we're just going to hop into it really quickly because we got a lot to get through. I've been volunteering with the Repair Cafe and with the Tool Library just for about a year, but jumped in pretty quickly. And I met Dan. And the Asheville Tool Library has been around since 2016 and started just with three people and an idea and has rapidly grown and now has over 3,000 tools in inventory, over 1,000 members. We service not just the Asheville area, but the whole Western North Carolina region. There's no geographical need based off of who can be a member with us. We also host workshops. We regularly host the Repair Cafe, and we just like to see what we can do for the community. Dan, you want to talk about the cafe?
Sure. I'm just going to jump into our presentation here. Do my share screen. And here we go. Can everybody see this? Are we good?
Looks like we see your speaker view.
Oh, oops. How about this? Give me just a second. Sorry, guys. What happened?
We see the speaker notes.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix that here. Sorry, we had this earlier. Share. Okay, are we good?
Yeah, it looks
Good.
good.
Looks great.
Okay. All right, this is Asheville Tool Library. Just wanted to emphasize here that the Asheville Tool Library really started in a garage. So very humble beginnings. And one motif that's going to kind of run through this is that it did take a group of people to get that started. It was a group of, I think, three at the time. And that early group really set it up so that other people could kind of come in and take over and keep it going. That is the position that Repair Cafe, WC Repair Cafe is really in right now. We're in that about core group of two or three or four of us, and we are rapidly growing into next year. This slide really shows WNC Repair Cafe's humble beginnings, and really want to emphasize our farm setting. We started in a rural location, and we have rural skills. Our volunteers are out here fixing chainsaws, and we started in a farm shop. This was a nonprofit educational farm that supported us with an initial boost of $1,000 to buy specialty tools and supplies. But more importantly, we had probably about a third of our initial volunteer pool was farm staff. So again, just to emphasize, it really takes a core group to attract other volunteers. And that's something that we're going to see a lot in the context of our response to Hurricane Helene. Again, this is our volunteers kind of showing off our small engine skills that we've been nurturing for many years. Hurricane Helene, if you're not aware, hit Western North Carolina in very late September, following already following a pretty large cold front that came in from the north and deposited a lot of rain, say on like Wednesday in our area, where Hurricane Helene came in on Friday and deposited much more rain. Look, you're seeing stuff like 22, 24 inches of rain dropped over our area in a 3-day period. I want you to take note of this purple band here where it's dropping the most rain. Kind of coincides over some of the largest mountains on the East Coast. So these are very steep mountains and concentrated very steep valleys. And these mountainous valleys are very rural areas. Water's moving through there very quickly, and it's making its way down into Asheville at a very impressive rate. This is far more rain than was forecasted. We knew rain was coming, but nobody expected this level of rain. So, this is not coastal flooding. This is something very unique to our area. A lot of downed trees came with this rain too. I promise not to show too many photos of the disaster. This is the only one I'm going to show, but I want you to understand the scale at which we're working at here. This is down in Swannanoa, which is a town that is just east of Asheville, that probably got some of the most severe flooding. Certainly the most slower water flooding. So this is where a lot of those mountain regions are pooling down into Swannanoa. Look at this rooftop in the background, and this little speck here is actually somebody standing on their roof, waiting to be rescued. And presumably, the story goes, I don't want to share, too many stories here, but pulling her dog out of the river. And rest assured, she was later rescued by a kayaker. So that is the scale we're working at. Day one, this again would have been Friday night. And immediately after the storm, Shelby, you want to jump in and talk about this for a second?
Yeah, we were within about a 12-hour period, we all kind of realized how serious it was getting. We lost power, we lost water, we lost cell phone service. If you live in a rural area, you know that it's usually one road in and one road out. And so a lot of people were immediately caught off from knowing even the scope of how bad things were. I was pretty lucky with my location, and I was able to make it from the rural area that I lived. And my first instinct was go to the tool library, because I knew we had a solar setup there that used a goal zero, the solar panels and the inverter and the battery bank. And my first thought was like, let's get power. As I was driving into town, I found one spot in town that, like, for some reason, the cell tower still worked there. So my first instinct was to get power and bring it back to that area. People were already gathering there and like using their cell phones. And as I pulled in and parked there and set up the solar panels and allowed people to start charging their phones while they were making their calls, the first thing I heard is that a community center in our town that is an anarchist bookstore was starting to host daily meetings. And because that was the only place that I thought to go to get information, the next day I went to that meeting and I set up the solar panel again. And that was where we started to hear about the scope of the damage just from word of mouth. I met another person from the tool library. His name's Stan. He actually heads our maintenance department. And we wanted to ride out in my truck to check on a few friends, and started to see for ourselves mostly how much tree damage there was. Trees were blocking roads, trees were on power lines. Stanton has small engine repair experience, and he knows how to sharpen chainsaws. So the first thing that we started to do is working within our means of providing the power that we had with our solar capabilities and going around and sharpening people's chainsaws and trying to repair them. And by the day 5, the next Tuesday, we were starting to get inconsistent cell phone service back, but only texting, no internet, nothing like that. And even then, we started adding timestamps to our text messages, because you would send a text and it would take days sometimes for it to get delivered. So you'd be getting information way after you tried to get it out. But Dan messaged me and was like, let's get Repair Cafe going and try to start helping out. So we pretty much took the resources that we had, the network that we had, and started immediately pivoting to try to help our community.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that, in my area and many, many areas, I live about 10 miles north of Asheville. we were absolutely stuck. We could not leave our neighborhood for probably 2 or 3 days. We had actual road damage heading out of our neighborhood, and then we had some areas that were just blocked by literally hundreds of trees before we could leave the neighborhood. My town, just 10 minutes north of Asheville, did not have cell service for probably 10 days. And no power for 2.5 weeks. Most of us went without water for about that long as well. So we're talking about a storm that really isolated us to very small communities for the first couple of days, and then leading into about 5 or 6 days afterwards, it's when people were able to get out, when people started to be able to find gasoline to be able to go and confidently leave their neighborhoods. Talking about some pretty serious communication issues, and that's a main motif that's going to run through this as well, is how we utilized what communication we could, and really where our gaps are in communicating with our volunteers and reaching other people. So this is in the parking lot behind the Anarchist bookstore. And like Shelby said, she had met with them a day or two prior and got the word out solely by word of mouth that we're going to be there. And this fellow sitting on the ground here is one of our walk-in volunteers from that day. So already we're starting to see that just showing up with a core group of, say, 2 or 3 volunteers with the process in place and some of the tools and supplies that we need, we're already attracting volunteers, people that, well, for the most part, are out of work temporarily. And we're dealing with a more expanded volunteer pool. So we're seeing more people willing to help. And we're hearing often from so many people that this is a new way to help. And this is something that they never thought that they could do before. So constantly very inspired by that. So here already we're getting people coming in from all over Asheville, mostly fixing a lot of generators and sharpening a lot of chains. Day 7, we're already kind of starting to explore the idea of branching out into other communities. This is the same people that had our walk-ins from the bookstore, and we met at Weaverville, which is my hometown, and this is where we're starting to link up with other distribution hubs in the area. So people that are distributing supplies and food to people in need are coming to these locations, and then they're seeing us set up sometimes just in an adjacent parking lot. And they're coming in the morning, they're seeing that they're there, that we're there, and they're turning around and getting their stuff and bringing it back to us and getting the word out. Already by day 7, thanks to Shelby and the social media connections with the Asheville Tool Library, we're starting to pick up other forms of communication. Specifically here in Weaverville, we're already starting to learn that the public radio has picked up our events and is starting to broadcast radio. I don't know how many of you guys have lived through a storm like this, but that is a special thing to have no communication whatsoever, but still be able to listen to the AM radio. And we're talking about our AM radio right-wing gadfly is still tearing up at the idea of all these people helping out, and really is a beautiful coming together of community. And we're just grateful to be a part of it. I want to say each one of these events, I'm just showing individuals here, but we probably got 10 to 12 volunteers, and we're fixing up to 50, sometimes 60 chainsaws and 5 to 10 generators within a 4-hour period. So we're working very fast. This is out in Barnardsville. This is the community that Shelby is speaking about that really only has one road in, normally only has one road in. In this case, there's severe damage to the road. It's actually restricted down to a 1-lane road. Very isolated community. We're trying here again to set up across the street from a distribution hub. This is in the parking lot of the Barnardsville post office. And you can see we've got about 2 or 3 inches of flood mud down there that we're working on top of. Real quick, special shout out to my son for let me drag them around to this. It was a special time for us to bond as well. My son is out of school for a month here, and really pretty wild how Buncombe County really had to more or less shut down for so long. Let's see, what else about this, Shelby? Anything you want to add about Barnardsville?
Just that what at this point where everyone's coming in and working mostly out of the back of their trucks and bringing their own tools. Dan had a pretty good base from the repair cafes he hosted so far, but usually the repair cafes that we done, we were fixing lamps and we were fixing vacuum cleaners. We didn't really have places to dump old fuel, ways to clean out carburetors. So at this point, we're kind of making it up as we go. No stores were open at this time, so we couldn't buy replacement parts. We were just kind of like hoping we had the right stuff, and people were bringing us stuff at this time, but at this point there were still no roads in or out of the Western North Carolina region. All of the big interstates were closed. There was no aid coming in. So I saw some people asking about like government response and stuff like that. It was pretty limited at this time. We're just seeing communities and people doing stuff at this early in the response.
Yeah, take a look at the helicopters over here. We are starting to see some aid coming in here. It's mostly in the form of supplies like fresh water and canned food, things like that coming in from presumably FEMA. Yeah, in terms of chainsaw supplies, forget it. It's probably not until day 8 or so that auto parts stores were starting to open. Big box stores, forget it. Auto parts stores were opening. There's no electricity, so they're taking their receipts on paper, and it's cash only at this point. But we are one of the first to get into the auto parts store, so we're buying up all the spark plugs we can. Yeah, Barnersville, one thing I want to stress here is that maybe going out to these remote locations was not our best strategy. It was difficult to get the word out here. It would have been more helpful if we were there the day prior to get the word out. And then they would know that they're there the next day. So hard to move around Barnersville that we're really not getting our name out there so much. Our services aren't known. But I do want to stress that people were already coming from Asheville. They were following us around. So with that observation, we decided to go back to Asheville the next day and setting back up in the parking lot at the Asheville Tool Library. This was a very busy day for us. And again, probably fixing 50 or 60 chainsaws. Waynesville was our next community that we hit. And Waynesville out in Haywood County is a little further west, not hit so hard by the hurricane, but we had our own core group of volunteers in Waynesville. They did not lose internet, hardly lost power for, I don't know, maybe a day or two for the most part in Waynesville. So very wide communication in Waynesville. Those people are paying attention to what we're doing and watching us, and we were very busy in Waynesville with our Waynesville volunteer group already established through most of the repair cafe stuff we were doing in the region. This guy in the background here is a retired shop teacher and very, very skilled at small engine repair specifically. So again, another motif I want to really stress here is specific skills are necessary in this context. In our context, it was chainsaw repair and it was generators. One thing I think we should all think about is, in your area, what's the context of a natural disaster in your area? Does it look like this? Do you need to be building chainsaw repair capacity now? Or not? This is getting into Swannanoa, one of our next stops. It's in the parking lot of a HVAC repair company that was really in one of the hardest hit areas. Again, that image from the beginning with the houses underwater. This is maybe less than a mile from that community. Again, very busy. Here we're starting to see that mostly through social media, our message is getting out into the entire country. We're seeing people travel within North Carolina, but we're also seeing people come from out of state that want to help us. And we're getting really kind of some random messages from people that want to donate to us somehow, some way. I think somebody had a catering service and they wanted to drop off a bunch of like pork ribs or something. We're like, what are we going to do with pork ribs? But we're definitely seeing an outside folks coming in from outside that really want to help and kind of starting to understand, I think, the gravity of our situation that we really are inspiring a lot of people here. I want to show this map. I don't know how clear this is, but I want to show you kind of our next pivot out of mostly what I've been talking about is Buncombe County here. Weaverville is the star. That's where I live. And down south is Asheville. So we're mostly in that area for the last week or two. And what we're starting to realize is that Buncombe County government is on top of it. Buncombe County government is organized and effective and efficient, and there's a lot of support coming into Buncombe County. Not so much in these northern, more rural counties. What we're finding is that the county government response is lacking and mostly relying on a lot of mutual aid networks, church networks, and food hubs. I don't know if you guys have food hubs in your region or if that's like a specific terminology that we use in North Carolina, but a food hub is sort of a connection between farmers and folks that need fresh produce. And it's these guys have a pulse on who is in the community that needs help. They also have a pulse on who in the community can offer help. So we're finding them, it's almost as a stand-in for county government assistance agencies. So we're starting to partner with food hubs, and we're really learning a lot there about using their communication networks. Also, further up north here is where these really high mountains are. So this is where we're seeing the most severe flash flooding. Setting up in Burnsville is one of those communities, almost a ghost town here. We literally had walk-in volunteers who lost their homes, and they are wandering, looking for a place to plug in, and they find us set up. We'll go up there with just 2 or 3 of us, arriving in the parking lot on site, and we have walk-in volunteers. From this day forward, we're dealing with a lot of walk-in volunteers. It's really quite wonderful, and we had a very busy day fixing chainsaws and generators that were completely underwater and full of mud. It's really fascinating. Quick shout out here to Kyle and Courtney. This couple drove all the way from Indiana to come work with us. Okay, so they took their vacation and decided they didn't want to have a vacation, but they wanted to come help instead. Kyle is actually a cemetery maintenance worker. And Cami, I want to kind of reflect on your statement about, not always feeling like it's important work if you don't have a degree or something, some letters behind your name. But Kyle, the cemetery maintenance workers, has probably fixed more weed eaters than anybody in North Carolina, and he absolutely put those skills to work. Outfitted his travel van as a mobile repair workshop. We're very inspired by Kyle and his wife. Back at the Asheville Tool Library, this is when we're starting to offer emergency repairs, not just small engines and chainsaws. We're starting to say, hey, bring us your dehumidifiers. We're looking at phase 2. It's not just digging yourself out of your neighborhood. It's now how can we start to actually repair the communities? What tools do we need to repair communities? And another quick shout out to one of our best volunteers. This is John from Waynesville. John did fix radios in the Korean War on submarines. So we're very grateful to have John's help with electronics. One thing I want to say here about Cami asked us to kind of reflect on what kind of grit and conflict we ran into, not just paint a rosy picture, but notice this big bay door to the Asheville Tool Library is closed. And I was hesitant to share this, but we did have some conflict between us, WNC Repair Cafe, and specifically the maintenance department at the Asheville Tool Library. What's happening here is there's blurred lines between who is Repair Cafe and what are they offering, and who is Tool Library and what are they offering. And basically, we're having a lot of people drop off broken stuff at the Tool Library with the expectations that they're going to fix it. And we're running into some problems there. So what we decided to do was just kind of set up a rigid line. We've only got a handful of volunteers that are going inside the Tool Library to get tools as we need them and bring them out. But at this point, we're more or less working out of the back of our trucks, and that's not as necessary as you might expect. Great volunteer crew. Got a couple here that drove up from Charlotte. Again, we got a lot of walk-in volunteers, even in Asheville. Spruce Pine. This is probably the pinnacle of our experience. Kind of capping on everything that I've already spoke about. Showing up with the skeleton crew. We did not know what to expect in Spruce Pine. It was 3 of us that have been to most of these events that came into Spruce Pine. A very rural community, one road in, Highway 19. This is about 30 miles up Highway 19, completely isolated by all other rural routes out of Spruce Pine. Roads are washed out here, so it's isolated and will be for a while. We partnered with the food hub here that was able to get the message out. This is 2.5 weeks after the storm. Food hub got the message out mostly by word of mouth. And we had 60, 65 chainsaws, I want to say by 11:30 in the morning already. And what started with just 3 volunteers probably had 10 volunteers by noon. And 65 chainsaws, probably 5 to 10 generators fixed by 5 p.m. that day. Again, very proud of our efforts in Spruce Pine. Hardware stores were still closed here 2.5 weeks later.
And
Yeah.
really, really fantastic and really fascinating. I did want to just call attention to time. We do have another presentation that we're a little bit over on.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll wrap up. Give me just 3 minutes. I think I can wrap up. Quick shout out to myself for fixing this flooded generator. And the reason why I wanted to do that was to emphasize that even I am coming in 3 weeks prior with limited small engine repair skills. This was absolutely boot camp for me. And Asheville Tool Library is continuing to explore post-Helene programs, mainly through teaching workshops on chainsaw safety and repair, and serving as a mutual aid distribution hub of their own. We're continuing to get back to normal. We've got a sewing event tomorrow night. And want to leave off here with our vision for expanding this effort is taking a mobile repair shop on the road and reaching more rural areas. We're very inspired by the walk-in volunteers and that aspect of being able to reach rural communities. And again, over and over again, we're hearing the words from people that are walking in. We did not know this was something that people did. This is a new way to help. So, yeah, thanks a lot. I just wanted to say thanks for letting me present. And I think Shelby says this best. I think had we had this conversation a year ago, just even the concept of emergency repair, we could have been much better prepared. We could have had the tools and supplies that we needed to fix even more generators. We could have had those communication networks in place. And I hope that we can continue this conversation tomorrow, kind of talk about how you guys can be prepared and how we can better do this next time there's a natural disaster in our region. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to give Shelby just a minute to say any final words. One, to remind everybody that we can continue this conversation tomorrow. It's one of our opening breakout sessions on repair network contribution to resilient communities.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be discussing kind of more the systems that we learned, some of the logistic things and the hurdles. So it'll be a little more of a practical discussion about the lessons that we learned. But like Dan said, I think this kind of conversation, it was really emotional. And so a lot of things we learned was trial by fire and forewarned is forearmed. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of these types of events in the world and in our countries and climate events. And so how can we be prepared for them? And it alleviates some of the emotional burden when you feel like you actually got to contribute something.